Hello on this snowy Thursday. Hope you're doing well. So, as I said in class, if you were in class and you know what is due for tomorrow, you don't have to watch this. The videos are really only for people that are not logging in remotely. And as I've said many times, there's a direct connection between you logging in, getting your work done, and how little you have to do independently once you log out. Okay, so make it happen. Just log into the Google Meet at 1:45 if you have questions too. Okay, so thinking back to this week, we watched the first half an hour or so of the Giver movie on Wednesday. We will continue to watch the rest of the movie on the next two remote Wednesdays. If something happens and we have a remote day between now and then, maybe we can shift gears. I'm not really sure. As we think about snow in February, one never knows, right? Okay, so tomorrow you are going to log in or you're going to show up and you're going to have this packet done. I don't really care if these things are colored or not yet, because you have to do the matching in order to color them properly, because we're doing this project right here, right? So by the time you come in tomorrow, this third page is going to be all filled in. And I will also post the answer key as a PDF at the end of class. Okay, so this little packet right here is leading us to this project right here, which we will eventually all do in both cohorts. So we're going to go over the answer key and talk about the Olympic gods and goddesses a little bit more. Today in class, we also started reading The Lightning Thief, right? Your cover looks like this. My cover fell off, so mine looks like this because I have my son decorated. So we read at least up through the end of page 6, and all of the students have to finish chapter 1 up through page 15, which is chapter 1. So we meet Percy Jackson, we learn a little bit about his life, okay? Posted is the audio book. I think there's 2 or 3 people that are in cohort B that do not have a copy of the book, so they'll have to listen to at least chapter 1, okay? You have to be ready to start doing something with chapter 2 on Friday. Now, as I look ahead to our writing unit, the idea, they're very much into what are called text-based responses. Any English teacher is into text-based responses. So the important piece of the writing about reading is that you can have definitive opinions about the characters. But in order to write articulately about reading, you have to have those opinions based on factual evidence. And if we start to read through, we see that there is indeed factual evidence as to why our opinions develop. And a lot of times as I reread the book, I find factual evidence to support that there sort of were hints all along as to what was happening. So think about the questions you have as they arise. And a lot of times those are going to end up being the things that you write about in reference to your reading. As I look ahead to the writing about reading unit, we have to backtrack a little bit because we actually don't have enough experience in our reader's notebook to do the next task. So a little bit of next week is going to be making sure we do that. Yes, we will continue to do the Google Forms quizzes, and yes, we'll continue to play Kahoot, but we also want to start thinking about ourselves once again as those who can write about what we are reading. For many of us, that might be The Lightning Thief. And for others of us, that also might be a book of our choice, as we talked about when we did the Stolen Party, right? One other thing, sorry, I just want to mention is this book, D'Aulaire's Book of Greek Myths, right? If you haven't seen this before, I talked to you about it. I know that these pictures look a little bit primitive, but they do give a good visual. For example, a lot of the Titans and the Olympians are in that family tree in the very front. And also in class, we summarized what happens a little bit in chapter 1. For example, we talked about this first generation, which is really Chaos and Gaia. And we talked about how after them were the Titans. And the Titans were really just these manifestations of nature. And there were 12 of them. The most famous of which were Kronos and Rhea. Kronos is going to come up again and again throughout the course of the novel. Here he is. I think you saw this visual if you came to class. Here's Kronos. Now, look, if you look really carefully, there we go. I have to do everything in a mirror image, and I'm not getting good at it. There are little heads of gods and goddesses in his stomach, in his six-pack Titan stomach. And the reason being is because he had received a prophecy that his children were going to destroy him. So his solution to the problem is every time he has a child, he eats them. And then it takes Rhea a little bit to catch on to this. So here she is stealing away young Zeus. So she finally catches on by baby number 6, who goes off to an island to be raised by goats and nymphs. And until Zeus is old enough and he overpowers his father, of course, he's the youngest, not the oldest of the Olympians. And then the 5 children that are in his stomach have been like fully formed because they are gods after all. And they kind of like turn and defeat and destroy Kronos. But that is referenced in chapter 1 of Percy Jackson because Percy Jackson knows the story of how Kronos disgorged 5 of his kids, and those 5 kids and Zeus overpower Kronos, and then they come to power as the Olympic gods and goddesses. The other thing we talked about in class, one other thing, were who sits on Mount Olympus, right? Because in your packet, in this Greek gods and goddesses packet, there is a Hades, and yet there's no Hades in many of the visuals of the gods and goddesses sitting on Mount Olympus. He's not here. You'll notice that, here we go, this is Dionysus, and he is in the novel, but he is not in our packet. Similarly, Demeter and Persephone, who are often seen always as mother and daughter, are also not in our packet, and yet one of the most famous Greek myths have them. And the story of actually, it's the myth that tells us how there became seasons, actually, and they are both in it. So they're not in the packet, but they're pivotal in Greek mythology in general, and they do come up in the novel. And then finally, Hestia is sitting here, and she's tending the fire, but she actually doesn't have a throne on Mount Olympus. And then Hades doesn't because his throne is in the underworld, and he only just merely comes to visit Olympus, kind of a thing. So these are some of the summaries of the myths that we talked about. One other thing before I let you go is we talked about the discrepancies that arise in mythology and folklore in general because they are stories that were handed down over time. Many of us often hear different versions of those stories, and so that is also something to consider, that different versions of it will arise. One other thing is that Greek mythology was not rated G, meaning that sometimes a slightly different version of the story is told. Call it watered down or whatever, because we don't, as adults, we don't always want to tell the entire tale because it's not exactly like the Disney Channel kind of a thing. And that also happens. So that's why the Dollars book is so good, I think, because it glazes over some of the like more adult things, and it allows you to summarize the more important piece of the myth, because those details aren't always important, to be totally honest. But anyway, that's what I'll be looking for. That's what you missed. Again, I cannot emphasize to you the importance of taking the time and being detail oriented enough that you log in to class on the days you are remote. Again, there is a direct connection between how little work you have to do after you log out and the time you spend in class, because we're doing the work in class that you would have to do independently. Make it happen. I will see many of you tomorrow, hopefully most of you tomorrow. Have a lovely day. And then Friday into, whatever, the assignment for tomorrow will be to read chapter 2. We'll probably start reading chapter 2. So you want to come to class having read all of chapter 1 and having the matching done. Thank you. Bye.